In this demo, we are going to talk a bit about triggers. We talked about the difference between a release and a deployment. The release is all the artifacts, triggers, approvers, and everything that you define in your release pipeline. The deployment is a deployment in a specific stage. You can define triggers for both. Let us start with defining triggers for the release itself. First, we need to select an artifact. For now, I will select the build that just completed and then the latest version. Now that we have selected the build, I can define a trigger for the release. I can select the flash icon and select a continuous deployment trigger. Every time that a build completes, and I can filter on the branches as well, so for example, a build completes from the master branch or a build completes from a feature branch, this release will start. This is called a continuous deployment trigger. Every time a build finishes, this release will fire. I can also select a schedule. By defining a schedule, I can say I want to start a new release every weekday, for example, at 3 a.m. This is convenient when you, for example, share a stage with testers that test during the day. You don't want to constantly deploy new versions to that test environments while people are working on it. So then you might say, every night I will create a clean and fresh environment at 3 o'clock. When you have defined your triggers for the release, that only creates the package. It only combines the artifacts with the stages and the approvers and timestamps the release. The version is fixed. You cannot change that anymore. But it doesn't automatically deploy to any of the environments. Therefore, you need to define triggers on the environments or on the stages. So in this case, I will go to the development stage and open up the trigger icon here. The trigger here is after release. So when a release is created, so for example, during continuous deployment, the deployment to this stage is automatically triggered. You can also select after stage, so only when another stage has completed, for example, after test or after the production stage. So this is how you define your sequence between the stages. Or you can select, I want to do a manual deployment only. So regardless of when the release is created, you have to deploy manually to this environment. The normal way to go is after release. You can also define artifact filters. For example, only trigger this release when this build has completed and not when another build has completed or another artifact source. You can also define a schedule. So for example, we only deploy to the development environment or to the production environment on Friday or on Thursday. This completes the demo around the triggers.